When people think of the Wild West, larger-than-life figures like Wyatt Earp, Billy the Kid, and Jesse James usually steal the spotlight. But for every famous gunslinger or law enforcement officer, there were countless other heroes whose stories have been buried beneath the dust of history. These were the Scouts, the fearless frontier women, the Native American warriors, and the lawmen who never made it into Hollywood scripts, but whose bravery shaped the untamed West just the same. Some fought for justice in a land where the law was often just a suggestion. Others stood up for their communities, protected the innocent, or survived against impossible odds. Yet their names have faded, their stories lost in the whirlwind of time. Today, we're dusting off the old records and bringing these unsung legends to life. Bass Reeves. When it comes to law enforcement officers of the Wild West, few were as formidable as Bass Reeves. Born into slavery in 1838, Reeves gained his freedom during the Civil War and later became the first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi. Tasked with enforcing the law in the untamed Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma, Reeves arrested more than 3,000 criminals over his 32-year career, a record unmatched by most law enforcement officers of his time. Reeves was not only an expert marksman, but also a master of disguise. He often donned different outfits, posing as a cowboy, an outlaw, or even a preacher, to get close to fugitives before arresting them. His legendary tracking skills made him one of the West's most feared law enforcement officers. Despite the dangers he faced, he never suffered a gunshot wound, a remarkable feat given the number of violent criminals he confronted. One of Reeves' most difficult cases involved arresting his own son. When his son Benjamin Reeves was charged with murdering his wife, Bass took the assignment himself. Despite the emotional burden, Reeves tracked his son down and brought him to justice, proving his commitment to the law was stronger than his personal ties. Though many believe Reeves inspired the Lone Ranger character, Hollywood has largely ignored his story. Today, historians and enthusiasts are working to ensure this incredible lawman is remembered as one of the greatest peacekeepers in Wild West history. John X. Beidler. Not all Wild West law enforcement officers wore badges. Some rode alongside stagecoaches with a shotgun in hand, ready to take down bandits. One of the most fearless of these men was John X. Beidler, a vigilante-turned-lawman who became one of the most trusted shotgun messengers in Montana during the Gold Rush era. Born in Pennsylvania in 1831, Beidler arrived in Montana during the early days of the Gold Rush. Seeing the rise of ruthless road agents, organized gangs of highway robbers, he joined a group of vigilantes determined to rid the region of outlaws. These vigilantes captured and executed Henry Plummer, a corrupt sheriff who secretly led a gang of thieves. After his vigilante days, Beidler became a shotgun messenger, a lawman who rode alongside stagecoaches to protect valuable cargo, particularly gold shipments. He was known for his bravery and quick trigger finger. When a gang of outlaws ambushed a stagecoach he was guarding, Beidler single-handedly held them off until reinforcements arrived. Unlike many law enforcement officers of his era, Beidler wasn't motivated by wealth or power. He lived humbly, often refusing to take large payments for his work. Even in his later years, he continued to tell stories of his adventures, warning younger generations about the dangers of the frontier. His unwavering commitment to justice and fearlessness in the face of danger cemented his legacy as a true Wild West hero. Elfego Baca. Elfego Baca was born in 1865 in Socorro, New Mexico, when the Wild West was still lawless and dangerous. As a young man, he saw how powerful ranchers and cowboys often mistreated Mexican Americans in his town. Unlike most people, Baca refused to be bullied. He wanted to bring law and order to his town and protect those without one to defend them. He taught himself law and had a strong sense of justice, but he was quick with a gun when necessary. This mix of intelligence and courage would make him one of the most unforgettable figures of the Wild West. In 1884, when Baca was just 19 years old, he arrived in the rough town of Frisco, now called Reserve, New Mexico. The town was controlled by rowdy Texas cowboys who did whatever they pleased. One day, Baca arrested a drunk cowboy for causing trouble. That decision nearly got him killed. The next morning, 80 angry cowboys stormed into town, demanding Baca release their friend. When Baca refused, the cowboys opened fire. Knowing he was outnumbered, Baca took cover in a small adobe house. The cowboys fired over 4,000 bullets at him, but the thick walls protected him. Using his gun, Baca fired back, killing 4 cowboys and injuring several others. For 36 hours, the gunfight continued. The cowboys tried to burn the house down, but Baca never gave up. Finally, when they ran out of ammunition and hope, the cowboys gave up and left. To everyone's amazement, Baca walked out alive and completely unharmed. His fearless stand earned him the nickname the One-Man Army. After surviving the famous battle, Baca became a sheriff in New Mexico. Criminals feared him because they knew he wasn't afraid to stand his ground. However, Baca wasn't just a tough lawman. He also had a brilliant mind. Determined to fight for justice differently, he studied law and became a lawyer in 1894. Many Hispanic citizens were being cheated out of their land or unfairly arrested, and Baca used the law to protect them. He argued cases in court, making sure his people got fair treatment. His work in law led him to politics, where he became a district attorney and later the mayor of Albuquerque. Even though he had traded his gun for legal books, he never stopped fighting for justice. Francisco Pancho Daniel. While many law enforcement officers operated in the heart of the Wild West, some fought crime along its volatile edges. One such man was Francisco Pancho Daniel, a Mexican-American sheriff who patrolled the dangerous U.S.-Mexico border during rising tensions between Anglo settlers, Mexican immigrants, and indigenous tribes. Daniel was a respected but feared lawman who took a hard stance against criminals, particularly horse thieves and smugglers who exploited the border's lawlessness. He was known for his ability to navigate both sides of the law, sometimes using undercover tactics to infiltrate outlaw groups. His fluency in Spanish and English helped him communicate with different communities, making him a rare bridge between cultures in an era of deep racial divides. One of Daniel's greatest challenges was hunting down members of Las Manos Negras, the Black Hands, a notorious outlaw gang that terrorized ranchers in Texas and Mexico. After months of tracking them, he orchestrated a daring raid on their hideout, personally capturing their leader. Unfortunately, as tensions between Mexican Americans and Anglo settlers grew, Daniel became a target of political forces who resented his growing influence. Despite this, his impact on frontier law enforcement remains undeniable. Even in the face of discrimination and hostility, his dedication to justice makes him one of the Wild West's most underrated law enforcement officers. Vaqueros, the first cowboys. Before American cowboys even existed, Mexican vaqueros had already mastered the art of cattle ranching. The word vaquero comes from the Spanish word vaca, meaning cow. Vaqueros were skilled horsemen and ranchers, and their techniques shaped everything we associate with cowboy culture today. Many cowboy traditions started with vaqueros, from lassos and branding to spurs and wide-brimmed hats. They taught American ranchers how to herd cattle, use ropes effectively, and ride in difficult terrain. Despite their expertise, vaqueros were often pushed into low-paying jobs when American settlers took over. They rarely got credit for their contributions, but their skills and traditions live on in rodeo events and ranching practices today. Native American cowboys. Native Americans were some of the best horse riders long before cowboys existed. Tribes like the Comanche, Lakota, and Nez Perce became famous for their horsemanship. When rodeo culture became popular, many Native American cowboys brought incredible riding skills to the sport. One of the most famous Native American rodeo champions was Jackson Sundown, a Nez Perce cowboy. He won the prestigious Pendleton Roundup in 1916, an impressive feat, especially since indigenous riders were often excluded from big competitions. Despite discrimination, Native American cowboys continued to excel in rodeo sports. Today, events like the Indian National Finals Rodeo celebrate their legacy, proving their influence on cowboy culture is still strong. James Beckwourth. James Beckwourth was a true frontiersman, an explorer, fur trapper, and trailblazer whose discoveries opened new paths for settlers in the West. Born into slavery in Virginia around 1798, Beckwourth gained his freedom and ventured westward, becoming one of the most skilled mountain men of his time. Despite his remarkable achievements, history has largely ignored his contributions. Beckwourth's journey into the frontier began when he joined the Rocky Mountain Fur Company in the early 1820s. He became an expert trapper and trader, developing deep connections with Native American tribes. He lived among the Crow people for years and was even adopted into the tribe, rising to the rank of chief. His knowledge of the land and Native American cultures made him a valuable asset to traders and settlers. One of Beckwourth's most significant contributions was the discovery of Beckwourth Pass, a low-elevation route through the Sierra Nevada mountains. In 1850, he identified this natural passage, which provided a safer and easier path for settlers traveling to California. He later developed a wagon road through the pass, which became a crucial route for pioneers during the California Gold Rush. Despite this achievement, Beckwourth never received the widespread recognition he deserved. Many white historians and explorers dismissed his discoveries, and other, more well-documented routes often overshadowed his contributions. Even today, his name remains unfamiliar to many Americans, even though the Beckwourth Pass still exists and is used by travelers today. Nat Love. While James Beckwourth conquered the wilderness as an explorer, Nat Love became one of the greatest cowboys of the Wild West. Born into slavery in Tennessee in 1854, Nat Love was freed after the Civil War. As a teenager, he set out west in search of opportunity. He found work on a Texas ranch, where he quickly mastered the skills of cattle, driving, roping, and horseback riding. His natural talent made him stand out among even the most experienced cowboys. Love's fame grew when he began competing in rodeos and cowboy contests. He earned the nickname Deadwood Dick after a famous competition in Deadwood, South Dakota, where he won nearly every event, including bronco riding, roping, and sharpshooting. His victories proved he was among the most skilled cowboys of his time, earning him a reputation across the frontier. After years of adventure on the range, Love transitioned to a different role, working as a Pullman porter on the railroads. He eventually wrote his autobiography, Life and Adventures of Nat Love, giving the world a glimpse into the real life of a cowboy. His story challenges the Wild West's narrow image and highlights black cowboys' vital contributions. Let's now look at women who broke barriers in the unforgiving West. These women broke barriers in law enforcement, education, and survival, proving that toughness and determination weren't just reserved for men. Stagecoach, Mary Fields. Mary Fields, better known as Stagecoach Mary, was a true force of nature. Born into slavery around 1832, she was freed after the Civil War and eventually found her way to the rugged terrain of Montana. Unlike many women of her time, Mary wasn't interested in marriage or domestic life. She craved adventure and independence. Her reputation for toughness grew when she took on a nearly impossible job, delivering mail across Montana's unforgiving landscapes. As the first black woman to become a star route mail carrier for the U.S. Postal Service, she braved blizzards, bandits, and wild animals to ensure that letters and packages reached their destinations. She rode a stagecoach pulled by horses, armed with a shotgun and a revolver, ready to fight off anyone who dared to stop her. If her stagecoach broke down, she would carry the mail on foot, sometimes trekking miles through the snow. Mary wasn't just known for her work ethic. She was also famous for her bold personality. She drank whiskey, smoked cigars, and had a no-nonsense attitude that made her both feared and respected. She could outshoot most men, and according to legend, once got into a gunfight with a saloon owner who had insulted her. Despite her rough exterior, Mary had a heart of gold. She was known for her generosity, often helping neighbors in need and caring for children in her community. When she retired, the town of Cascade, Montana, adored her so much that they granted her free meals at local restaurants. She died in 1914, leaving a legacy as one of the toughest mail carriers in U.S. history. Calamity. Jane. Calamity. Jane, born Martha. Jane Cannery, in 1852, was another legendary woman who refused to be confined by society's expectations. She earned her reputation as a sharpshooter, scout, and all-around tough frontierswoman. But beneath her wild image was a woman who cared deeply about helping others, particularly women and children struggling to survive in the West. Calamity Jane's early life was marked by hardship. Orphaned as a teenager, she worked as a cook, nurse, and ranch hand before gaining fame as a scout for the U.S. Army. She often dressed in men's clothing for practicality and to be taken seriously in dangerous situations. She rode alongside famous figures like Wild Bill Hickok, fought against Native American resistance groups, and became known for her fearless spirit. However, her legend wasn't just about gunfights and daring escapades. She also protected women, often stepping in to help those abandoned or mistreated. During smallpox outbreaks, she worked as a nurse, risking her own health to care for the sick. Despite her rough lifestyle, she drank heavily and lived on the road. She had a softer side that few people saw. Calamity Jane's life was a mix of truth and myth. But one fact remains clear. She shattered gender norms and proved that women could survive and thrive in the male-dominated world of the Wild West. Olive Johnson. Unlike Stagecoach Mary and Calamity Jane, Olive Johnson wasn't a gun-slinging outlaw or a fearless mail carrier. Instead, she fought a different kind of battle, the fight for education in the Wild West. In the late 19th century, when few schools existed in frontier towns, Olive took on the role of a teacher in the coal mining town of Moreland, Utah. Life in a coal mining town was tough. The population was a mix of immigrants from different countries, all struggling to build a new life. Many children had no formal education and were expected to work in the mines alongside their fathers. But Olive believed that every child deserved a chance to learn. Teaching in such a harsh environment wasn't easy, Schools were poorly funded, supplies were limited, and many parents didn't see the value in education. Yet, Olive pushed forward, finding creative ways to engage her students. She didn't just teach them how to read and write. She taught them about the world beyond the mines, giving them hope for a better future. Her impact went beyond the classroom. She became a mentor, a guide, and a source of stability in a chaotic environment. Many of her former students became business owners, community leaders, and teachers, proving that her work had a long impact. The Wild West wasn't just about famous cowboys and outlaws. It was shaped by brave and determined people who stood up for what was right. Heroes like Elfego Baca prove that courage and determination can make a difference. By telling their stories, we honor the true spirit of the Wild West, a place where strong, fearless people fought for justice. And who knows, there may still be more forgotten heroes waiting to be discovered. Thanks for watching.